fantabulous night to make romance. These are the colors of October sky. Great time to be in the moonlight. All we can ask is why. All the leaves on the trees are falling to the sound of the breezes that blow, and I'd like to play to the calling of your heartstrings that play soft to grow, and all the night's magic seem to whisper and hush, and all the songs you might seem to shine in your blush. Can I just have one more Moondance with you, my love? Can I just have one more Moondance with you, my I don't really know what's going to come out of these videos when I start, and so we're sort of talking about what makes a person happy. That's where we're up to. This is the third video of the AI series. So I said in the last video that we were going to talk about God and AI. This is a bit weird, yeah? And the relationship between the two, they're kind of like opposites. And so I think the reason why I played this song was to show you, I didn't know how the song was going to come out. There's no plan in my life to produce anything to a certain formula, yeah? And so whenever I do anything, it just comes out however it comes out. And this applies to both the words and the music. Oh, by the way, if you're just seeing this video for the first time and you haven't seen the other AI videos, if you just go to my YouTube channel page and search the videos for AI, you'll come up with all the AI videos, and you can watch the preceding videos to make sense of this video, because I'm not going to be repeating anything, just going to be carrying on. And so we had been talking about copyright, and so you can see that in this particular example the words of the song changed. They became like the meaning of the song, yet they were different words. I'd never sung these words before, and some of the melody got messed around. There was a bit of an improvisation at the end, and so if we keep everything free flowing without a plan, without an appointment and without a plan in the world, and we're free to move in the way that nature wishes us to move and operate, then we're following the will of nature. Whatever nature wills us to do is happening in the present moment. And so, because we haven't made a plan against nature, we're within nature's plan, because we haven't done it with a preconceived idea at a certain point, at a certain time. We've waited until nature picks the guitar up. Yeah. Then we're not breaking any of nature's laws. And so what nature does is it says, if you're not breaking any of my laws, I'll make you a happy fellow. And so right now making this video, I'm happy making this video. And I'm never unhappy, because I make sure that, having learnt what the laws of nature are, with respect to if I do certain things, then that's not going to work, and nature's going to make me unhappy. For example, if you ever make an appointment with anybody, you have to wait. And in this waiting, you'll become aware of time passing. You'll be looking at your watch. Because if you haven't broken any of the laws of nature, then you're in a place which we will call the eternal moment. Eternity, this is known as eternity. And there's no feeling of time passing. You have all the time in the world. We're not looking at the watch. We're not concerned about whether the video is rolling or not rolling, and whether we've been talking for too long or whatever. We're not bothered about any of these things. All we're doing is obeying nature, following the will of nature, and listening to what nature has to say to us through the speaker. Okay? Now that speaker could be me, it could be you. Whoever's present, as the conversation moves from one to the other, so the speaker moves from one to the other. But it's the same speaker talking. It's talking through a different brain. It uses the brain to manifest the words. So if the brain is not perfect, then the words will become perverted. We'll say but, and all these sorts of things. These expletives, yeah, things that are pushed out of us to show the listener that it's not perfect. So the speaker cannot be the perfect speaker that we are seeking for, yeah? Because it's necessary to not allow imperfect speakers to speak, because you've got God and the devil, all right? And the funny thing is about God and the devil is that the devil works for God. God is the creator, the force of nature that created everything. Okay? I'm going to stop now, take a pause. Okay, so how do we know that there's a God, or that there's nature, a spirit in nature, the spirit of nature? How do we know about this? When I say God, I'm using God and nature interchangeably, because that's how I see them, as interchangeable concepts, really. And the paradox is that we are not separated from God when we're perfect. Okay? So we're not born perfect because we're screaming, ah, maybe when we're born. So this is not a happy little chappy, and so this child is at certain points is incapable of being perfect. It doesn't have a perfect brain yet. Okay, you have to evolve a perfect brain in this world, and so generally, depending on how difficult your environment is, you can be pushed into this position of being outside of God. God doesn't want to have anything to do with you, okay? So God says to the human, says, I never knew you. I never knew you. Okay? When God pushes the human out of God's eternal moment, where he can operate creatively in the world, and pushes them inside his own brain, which is his mind, puts him inside his own mind. And this is the veil of the temple. The veil is covered the man now, and he only sees a grey expanse that took the place of the beautiful Garden of Eden. Okay, I'm in the Garden of Eden. It's a beautiful Garden of Eden. I'm in here. Doesn't matter where I am. It's always the garden. Yeah. There was a time when it was not like this for me. There was a time when I was most unhappy. I was depressed, and I did not know the reason for my depression, because I was continuously breaking God's laws, or the laws of nature. And so God has said to me, you need to learn the difference between good and evil. Okay? You need to learn the difference. And when you've learned enough, he doesn't tell me this now, he he's telling you this now. He's telling you this now. When you've learnt enough, I myself will come and rescue you. That's what God says. I will rescue you myself. Okay? And so until a man has actually been rescued by God, doesn't know anything about God, because God says, I never knew you. Okay? Now, even though a boy or a young man doesn't know anything about God from his own experience, there's no reason why he shouldn't learn about God from his elders, okay? People like myself, who have walked the walk before, know what God is, met God, had God save them, and be presented to them by God to say, listen, this is what you need to know if you want to be recognised again by God. Yeah? And anybody who's outside of God can never be happy. They never know what happiness is. They can try to become happy. They will always be trying to become happy. It will always be losing their happiness. Yeah? So there's only one way to happiness. And that way has been known by the ancients. If you want to, anybody, if you don't know anything about God, you're probably not watching this video, because this is really probably for people who know something about God but don't know everything about God. Got a few ideas about God, has already met God, but would like to. See, I said but. You haven't really met God. I was lying to you there. They think they've met God because there's a number of levels, like an apprentice moves through before he becomes a master philosopher. Okay. Now, this is a very interesting book. This is probably the greatest book we have from the past about the subject I'm talking to you on. Okay, so this is the Polycraticus, and it's written at the time of Thomas Becket, when he was murdered by the king, and John of Salisbury was his sidekick. John of Salisbury was greater than Thomas Becket. He was his kind of tutor, really, and he was present at the death of Thomas Becket, and he told Thomas Becket not to behave the way he was behaving, and Thomas Becket got killed, and this guy walked away from it. Okay, John of Salisbury, and he lived to a ripe old age. He finished off his days at Chartres Cathedral as a kind of abbot, and he, although he was part of the Christian church, the Catholic Church, there were many problems in the church, and so he wrote this book to try to put the church right, to put the people right, the same way as all the people now are trying to put the government right in America. That's also taking the place of the church. So you have RFK Jr., Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, the media people, the new media people, all trying to correct the problems that we have in the church of the West, all right? The church of science, yeah? And this guy was a bit like me now, like I am now. I have the keys, the same keys that this guy had, and how do you present them to the people? I don't know. He found this book, this way of presenting them to the people, and this book was studied for years and hundreds of years as the greatest work on morality ever written. Okay, and this guy did not call himself a churchman as such. He called himself a philosopher because he didn't see any difference between himself and the ancient Greeks and the people who wrote the Bible, Adam and Eve and all the rest of it, all the original philosophers, if you like. He saw them all as philosophers. And all he was doing was integrating all of their philosophies into one and discussing all the problems in the world at this time, the mistakes, and trying to bring to mind the people who were responsible for these mistakes, to try to get them to correct their ways and become good. And so one of the things he says in here, which is true, with everything, most of what he says is true, is that virtue leads to happiness. And there are many roads to virtue, but they all follow the same path, if you know what I mean. You can go meander through it, but it's all one path. They all lead to happiness, and they all lead to the favour of God in the end. Okay, God or nature. I'm not going to start repeating. I'm going to use this word God because it's a good word, and we need to embrace this word because it says more than nature, God. A little bit more. It frightens the life out of a lot of people. Yet it's something that we need to reclaim, because if we don't understand what God is, then it's only a matter of time. It's just that we haven't met God yet. And nobody should ever believe in God. That was the mistake of the church. They taught the people to believe in God. They said, as long as you believe in God, you're saved, you know. It's not true. It's just not true. There's a lot more to becoming saved than believing in God. And only God himself can personally save you. And I'm going to tell you a little story, because this morning, after I made the video, I had a book here, I had some books here, and so I felt like going out. Now, when it's time for me to go out, a little voice in the back of my head said, let's go out. That's all it is. Just say, let's go out. So I don't say, oh no, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. I just simply get my hat and my coat, and I go. And before I go, if there's anything I need to pick up, I'll think about it. And so I had too many books. I had too many books lying around my table. So I thought, well, I read some really good books lately, the Charles Manson stuff, which I made videos about. So I took those books, and there's a place in town where you can put books, second-hand books, that you want to just hand on to other people, so that people can find their own synchronicity to find out which book they need. So I put some books in my bag and I walked out the door. It's a beautiful day, the sun's shining, as you've seen on the video. And so I'm walking down the road and I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if I'm going to meet somebody. I'm looking around me because they have some neighbours and that, and I say, I wonder if I'm going to meet somebody who's going to want these books or one of these books. Yeah, there was 3 or 4 books in the bag. I wonder if I'm going to meet somebody. I kept my eye out. And I got down to the road where I cross over. Normally I cross over the road. And right where I cross over, standing like looking like a lost sheep, just standing, not going anywhere, in the middle of nowhere, is Edgar, my mate Edgar. And Edgar's like nearly 90, I think. He's 80 odd. He's like a father figure to me, Edgar. I don't see him very often, just now and again. And I always have very interesting conversations with him. But you see, Edgar is like part of God. Edgar. He hasn't studied what I've studied, but when you get to 90 years old, it's very unlikely that you haven't met God yet, because you know you would have gone out in the Devil's department, yeah. Because God has 2 departments. He has God's department, the department of the Son, yeah, God's Son, what we are supposed to be God's Son, and we have the Devil's department, which is all those people who God has excluded and said, I don't know you, okay? It doesn't give them any advice at all. So, for this meeting to take place, I've got to be without appointment, and so has Edgar. And Edgar's got to be following his will of God, doing what he feels like doing. And for some reason, Edgar has forgotten where he wants to go. He's just standing there, and then I walk up to say, oh, hello. And I can't remember his name, so I say, what's your name again? Oh, Edgar. Yeah, okay. I said, oh yeah. He didn't remember me either. You don't need to remember anything that you don't need to remember. So he said to me, yeah, I said, I'm not sure where I'm going. So I said, okay, Edgar, I said, hey, look, I said a few, I said, look, do you need a book, a good book? And so, a lot of people, you know, when somebody says that to you, who's part of God, you shouldn't say no, because you're going to have to learn that you don't do that. And Edgar, because he's 90s, he's not averse to that. You know, I mean, he's not. I did stop and ask him for real. I said, Edgar, do you need to read this book? And I explained to him what the book's about. And he says, yes, he'd like to read the book. You know, he takes the book. So now the book's found its new reader, and I know who's reading the same book. So maybe when I see Edgar in a month's time something, I'll ask him whether he read the book and maybe have a conversation or something about it. You know, who knows why both of us have to read the same book. But if you cooperate with nature, then these sort of mysteries can happen. All right, and all we're doing is we're little players in this play, and we just have to see how this mystery unravels in real time. So I then offered him a second book, and he knew he didn't need that. One was enough. So I said, no, he doesn't want that one. So that's good. He didn't do it, and I didn't say, oh no, you have to have it, you know. It's good. I just took it. I just said, okay, fine. I said to him, I'm going to go and put my books. I often put my books down where they give them away. So, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. So anyway, I left Edgar and I went to the way, and I put the other books that I had down on the way, and whilst I was there, I had a route around for some other books, another book to get, right? Now, what I've just given you, this little fortunate happening with Edgar was just following the will of God, and somebody put a really good book into his hands that was hard to find and cost about 25 quid, okay? And so that's what you call good fortune, yeah? So not only was Edgar happy, he was finding good fortune, right? Okay, now I did a good deed giving the book to Edgar, so maybe I need some good fortune. But before that happened, I'll show you what happened next, because I went to the books and I found this book which I took. Okay. Now, can you see the title of the book? I don't know what the book's about, but I took it because I felt called to have a look inside this book. Now, you'll see it says there, give war a chance. Now, if you're an idiot, you think that war's bad and peace is good, right? It's not true at all. War is absolutely just as necessary as peace. And there's never been a time when humanity has not been at war. Never in the whole history of the world. War is an absolute, every generational occurrence. Okay? And if you get things completely wrong, right, completely wrong, in the end, instead of growing old like Edgar and having good fortune, nature takes you out. God takes you out. And there was a man going around saying, give peace a chance. Give peace a chance, yeah? And peace doesn't come out of peace. Peace comes out of war. And war comes out of peace. Everything comes out of its opposite. So this man didn't know anything, and he was killed at a very, very early age. And he was wasting his life. He was buying expensive, spending all his money on Egyptian antiquities and not helping the people who he had told to, you know, give up your lives and give peace a chance and just become peace, love, and stay in bed and so on. Yeah, didn't help these people, and so he's the opposite. He's the one who's occupying the devil's department. He's never happy, and made the gravest mistake of all, which is to be a teacher of humanity and teach them wrong. Okay, so whenever anybody comes to do something like I'm doing with you, not with you, with the world, because this video, hopefully it lasts forever, and somehow if the AI might find it, and it may be useful for the children of the future. That's my hope for these videos. I'm going to take 5 now, because we've been speaking for a while, and I'll come back to it. When the war is over, got to start again. Pack my bags to nowhere, to no time, no space. You and I, we've used each other's shoulder. So young, but somehow so much older. How can I go home and not get blown away? When the war is over, got to start again. It's interesting, we just fought a tremendous war in America, really. The whole world has fought this war, has helped fight this war, because it's the Western Empire, it's not just America. We're all part of that Western Empire, and have been since World War II. And so the fight has been a civil war, and that fight has been won, and now justice is being served up in America. Democracy is coming to the USA, in the words of Leonard Cohen. And so, out of that, that's a war. Out of that war comes peace. So we get into peace now, and Russia will get its peace when its war is over. Yeah? So there's purpose to war, because if you don't have war, the dark side just takes over, and that's the end of you. Yeah, you have to fight for freedom. Yeah. Fight against wrong ideas and ignorance, injustice, and all these sorts of things. And all the fruit of walking in the way of death, the way outside of God, in the devil's department. Yeah. And I was watching a video yesterday of RFK Jr. being interviewed in the Senate. And I heard some very, very evil people, very, very bad behaviour coming out of some people questioning this man, yeah, in a way which is bullying and unfit for human consumption. And these words should never be heard in these very, very sacred houses. The Senate, my God, it's this most sacred house of the American nation, yeah, the big wigwam, yeah. And if a man opens his mouth in this terrible way, the gavel should come, tack, tack, tack. Out. How dare you talk to anybody in this way? And only by fighting against the evil, by correcting it, is the evil ever removed. And so what we have is a lot of very, very, very bad behaviour going on in governments, in senates, in parliaments, throughout the world, really. And it shouldn't be tolerated. It's because the Speaker of the House, whose job is to discipline Parliament, is a partisan figure, supposed to be a bipartisan, neutral person. Okay. Now, the only way you got a neutral person ever was for people who hold those positions to give up all their wealth before taking the position, so that there's no conflict of interest. Yeah? And so all these people in high level positions in the Senate, they shouldn't have any money at all. They should be given a pension by the people. They should have to give up all their stocks and shares and property and everything. Their car, everything. Everything they own. They should have to give up, give away to the people, not to their relatives, to give to their people. And they should then become wards of the state, and only in this way are they able to provide the necessary assurance that their positions they hold responsibly and at the will of God, okay, and not at the will of themselves and their cohorts, their mates, yeah. And it's a terrible fact that these people who operate in our parliaments and senates are rich and grow richer from this ignoble work. And it used to be the same in the church. In the church, people used to join the church to get rich and wealthy. They used to own many benefices, which is churches and that, and they'd just go and visit a different one every day. They'd travel around, live in luxury, speak a few words, tell the people what to do, and move on, and never ever do a stitch of work in their life, not like I'm doing now, okay? They will never ever teach the people like they're supposed to be doing. Set a good example, living their lives in poverty, chastity and obedience. And chastity doesn't mean not having sex, it means not fornicating, okay, with other. You can fornicate with other men and women, or you can fornicate with other nations, yeah? Fornication with other nations, The Americans and the British politicians are fornicating with Israel. They're fornicating with Israel. You cannot fornicate with a foreign nation. It's treason, yeah? And so there are many things wrong with our system, and somehow mankind needs to evolve. And the only way it's going to evolve is through understanding some of this kind of stuff in a new context. And how we bring about a new church needs to appear in the world. Not a church of bricks and mortar. This church has appeared in the world. As soon as God saves anybody and puts them part of what's called the elect of God. These are chosen for the afterlife. These people do not have to come back. Okay? They spend their lives somewhere else, in another dimension, another universe. Okay? It's a long journey to become a member of the elect. One has to become completely virtuous so that one is in the joy and happiness of God all the time, never breaking the law, except to learn new laws. To call humanity to this understanding again, to understand that God exists, and if you're not following a virtuous life, you're not going to be happy. Every man wants to be happy. Every man, woman and child wants to be happy. They need to understand there's no shortcut to happiness. Happiness comes from a virtuous life. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. And obey the will of God, not your own will. And so to give yourself up to nature so that nature's in charge. And a person who's put nature in charge himself is never unhappy doing anything. Whatever they're doing what makes them happy. And that's my advice. People saying to me about the AI, I say, what am I going to do about AI? How am I going to live my life? How am I going to know what to study? How am I going to know what You don't need to know that. All you need to do is do what you feel like doing. Do what you love to do. Every moment of the day. When you get up in the morning, if you feel like, first of all, don't get up unless you feel like it. And when you feel like it, get up. And then do whatever you feel like doing. And don't obey any man. Because the opposite of obeying the will of God is obeying the will of man. And nobody should be telling anybody else what to do. It's that simple. You don't need to tell people what to do. People know what to do. You can work together in a business with people, but you don't need to tell them what to do. I worked together with computer professionals. I had the guy who owned the business. I have my part of the business, other people have their part of the business. We walked through the door, we said good morning, and we got on with our work. We did whatever we felt like, yeah? Nobody's came to us and say, do this, do that. It's not necessary to have an environment like this. And man can only be free when he is allowed to do as the God inside him, determines. His own will, the will of God. That's enough. That's enough for this video. When the war is over, got to start again. Pack my bags to nowhere, to no time, no place. You and I, we used each other's shoulder. We're so young, but somehow so much older. How can I go home and not get blown away? Nobody gonna steal this heart away. Ain't nobody gonna steal this heart away. Ain't nobody gonna steal this heart away. Don't let anybody steal your heart away by telling you what to do.